Hey there hunters, and welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Today we got a pretty short video that's just going to discuss the more meta approach to gunning here in Monster Hunter Wilds, at least before any title updates and such. No bow stuff just yet, I've been kind of coping over guns still, but I'll get to it for sure. In the meantime though, just check out like Titus or Roja and see what they're doing. Anyway, back to today's video. So we got some updates on bowgun frame data, optimal playstyles, and more min-maxed armor sets when you finally have all your decorations set up. So let's get into that. Before we get to the min-maxed armor sets, which I know is what people really want, I'm going to discuss the change in playstyles since that does affect our armor skills quite a bit. Starting with the light bowgun, a lot of runners have opted for the burst step only playstyle as opposed to the run and gun rapid style. Difference here is that burst step is faster shot for shot and can empty its clip faster than a normal run and gun can, which is obviously a DPS boost. But you do lose out on your max might because you're going to be burning a lot of stamina, which honestly isn't that big of a sacrifice anyways. This playstyle on paper is about 30% faster shot for shot than normal gunning, which obviously crushes max might, but that's when you perform this style close to frame perfect. But you can also mess up your inputs and throw everything out of whack. Also, for some reason, doing the burst step only style feels much harder on mouse and keyboard than it does on controller, so take that into consideration if you're not using controllers. Burst step is 100% the optimal way to play, but again, that's only going to be true if you're some inhuman who can keep the inputs up perfectly through the entire hunt, or you have macros set up for it. So, while optimal on paper, and by a good margin, compared to run and gun, when you're not playing optimally, your DPS isn't going to be much better, if at all. So again, just keep that in mind. Now, that being said, a good middle ground is doing the rapid shot into a burst step because it's much more consistent and on average is going to be much better than normal rapid shooting and does perform at least equally on burst step only. This is because input buffering is so much more lax on these combos, so you don't need any macros or spam clicks to get pretty precise inputs. And the follow-up rapid shot from the burst step is very fast, coming out in half the time. So again, if you're absolutely frame perfect and you can keep up chaser burst only forever through the hunt, sure, do that, that's optimal. But otherwise, rapid shot into chaser burst and then back into rapid on repeat is an equally valid option. Either way, both these styles use the same amount of rapid energy, so there's no difference in there, and either way, we're going to be dropping max might. This also does mean that we're no longer going to be using counter mines to wound break, no adhesive emos because they're garbage, and no landmines because they're garbage. They all just do too little damage for the time investment to load and plant them. Like other games, we're just going to be pointing and shooting, but now we get a cool slide to go with it, so we're sticking to that. For heavy bowgun, if you're still out there pretending like it's a good weapon like me, I do have some good news to share. First is that unlike World and Rise, where heavy bowguns shared a cooldown on Wyvern Heart preventing you from using it, then farcastering back to camp and grabbing another, Wyvern Heart heavy bowgun using it again, here in Wilds you actually can use 2 Wyvern Heart bowguns and cool them down independently, allowing you to run 2 Wyvern Heart heavy bowguns if you wanted to, and yes, I do plan to make that into the build, so that's kind of a cool thing. And also, as it turns out, heavy bowgun pretty much wants to be mounted on a secret all the time unless you have to be running a Wyvern Heart setup. Reason being is that heavy bowgun has this weird delay after reloading when you shoot, which is very annoying and why I have to test frame data, including the last shot up until the next first shot, so I can make sure that that's taken into account. But I've noticed that when you're mounted on a secret, it's a little bit faster than normal. Not by much for sure, it's like 10 frames, but faster is faster, and 10 frames per reload can save you a few seconds over the course of a hunt. And so optimal is optimal. But is playing mounted combat really optimal? And well, yeah, kinda for heavy bowgun. Well, you can't use Wyvern Heart on the mount, elemental gunning is going to be absolutely just fine, and being mounted gives us more mobility than being on the ground, plus it allows us to stay away from monsters more, which keeps us in critical distance easier, which is a huge boon since all the ammos need to be in proper critical distance range now, we can't just point blank them or whatever. Plus, we no longer have the delays from blocking and repositioning, which is going to save us some time, and we don't lose stamina for walking around on the secret and shooting, so we can keep up max might on heavy bowgun while still having pretty good mobility. So yeah, as weird as it sounds, mounted combat is kind of going to be where it's at. Is it absolutely a min-max playstyle? Maybe not, to be honest, but it's the most unique thing heavy bowgun's got going for it, so let him have it. And that's basically all that's changed with the actual playstyles and what we're doing. So with that out of the way, let's get into the armor sets. So for the meta armor sets, we do have a few options depending on what you're doing. To start with the light bowgun running elemental sets, we can still run our normal set here with burst, weakness exploit, and peak performance, assuming you plan on doing a speedrun and not getting hit. Risky, but statistically a good call. You can also swap that out for resentment, sure. Burst on element is still good, but we don't have hard data on anything. Most armor sets you're going to see though are probably running agitator, since most people are just fighting Arcveld, who isn't weak to elemental anyway. And so people really only care about raw right now. We'll get into that set in just a second. And so I've removed Max Might and Evade Extender from these sets because we're going to be using the mix of rapid fire chaser rounds, which will keep our stamina not maxed, and so Max Might won't be useful. And we also don't want to be sliding all over the place and in and out of critical distance, so remove the Evade Extender. Evade window is another option if you don't want to run peak performance or resentment, but again, those are pretty much free. You can run resentment in a hot area or plan to just take a hit and you're fine. Either way, you have some personal choice here. The next one sacrifices burst for agitator, and since agitator is 15 raw and 20 affinity while monsters enraged, and the uptimes are very good, it is recommended for pretty much on all raw setups at the very least. So this is going to be, agitator, Wex, and then running 5 resentment. Like I said, you can swap this out with peak performance or evade window, whatever you want, because there are a few good skills that fit in these level 2 slots. Just decide if you plan on getting hit or staying out full life. For heavy bowgun, we can run pretty much the same set as we've been running for the most part again, but with elemental heavy bowgun on a secret, we can run max might since we don't have to lose stamina on the bird, and since we won't be blocking or rolling, we can pretty much maintain high max might uptime, and we don't have to slot in any of the guard skills on our weapons, and so we can just set up for crit elemental shots. Again, I'm still running burst here in our elemental bowguns for our elemental shots, but you can also swap over to the agitator setup if you want. I just prefer that on the raw setups rather than the elemental one, but both are great. Now lastly, we have to address the elephant in the room, which is the 2-piece gore running antivirus and the corrupted mantle. Now this is going to be absolutely best in slot given the affinity you get from these 2-piece set bonus, the frenzy and the antivirus, and then plus you add on agitator and Wex and you're basically capped out on affinity all the time. Plus if you wanted to, you can use the frenzy cleanse to proc coalescence for elemental ammo. This setup is very strong and probably is what you're going to be seeing in most speedruns right now, and while this is the preferred setup, I personally prefer to play TA rules or time attack rules, which typically aren't going to allow mantles whenever those get established, and so those rules kind of kill this whole setup, which is why I'm sticking to the sets I discussed formerly. If you're just looking for the fastest kill times and the most optimal play, then yes, Corrupted Mantle to set up Frenzy, and then you run Gourd 2-piece to cleanse it with Antivirus, and that's 100% the way to go. This is true for both raw and elemental setups, for both bowguns, and well, pretty much everything, every weapon, whatever. So we do have 3 general options for armor sets right now. You have Wex and Burst for more elemental, Wex and Agitator for pretty much anything. It's unsure whether or not Burst is going to beat Agitator later on, we'll see. And then we have Gore with Wex and Agitator for, again, anything, but that's not really going to be time attack valid. So take your pick, but these are going to be the sets you should farm for and make for the time being. Title Update 1 made changes, so of course don't get too comfy. But yeah, that's going to be all for me. Thank you all for watching, and good luck out there, hunters.